That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. It's another busy one this week with the transfer deadline looming large tomorrow morning. So we'll be covering all of that as well as wrapping up that Millwall draw last weekend and looking ahead to Leeds still to come. And to do all of that, I'm joined by Mike. How are you, Mike?
Yeah, good. How are you? My favorite time of the transfer window, as we all know.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of deals apparently going to be done. So we'll see how many of them get across the line. I was actually just before we jumped on trying to catch up with all the news from overnight. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, apparently Casey Palmer's heading here on a permanent deal.
I did see that.
Trying to get my head around it all. Ben Doak potentially from Liverpool.
I heard there was no substance behind that one, but the Palmer one seems to have been, apparently terms have been agreed. And he's on his way for a medical.
Yeah. I'm also a bit nervous. I've got this comment here from Jude in the comments saying nervous about the Zambrano news. Has there been any new news on Zambrano that I've missed?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, maybe Jude, if
is
you can.
Is this the drug bust?
Yeah, I assume it's something related to that. I don't know if there's been a new development on that we've missed. We'll see if people get some news broken for us rather than the other way around. But we'll start with the Millwall game just because I don't know if there's all that much to talk about with it in general, but we'll run through that quite quickly before we get into the transfer news because I suspect that's the main thing to discuss for today. 0-0 with Millwall. Not sure if it's exactly what we expected when we signed Tim Volter as manager over the summer, that we'd have a stalemate this early in the season. Not quite sure that's what a Jun would have expected either with his desire for attacking football. How did you see the result? Was it a positive to get a point or 2 points dropped?
I don't think the performance was a positive. I don't remember being that bored for a game in a long time, and I think we'd been promised, like you said, this kind of attacking football, and obviously players still have to gel. But I think we were speaking to Dan offline, and he kind of, we didn't have an argument. We had a discussion around, well, at what point do we stop using that as an excuse, given that we've had preseason? Yes, we've got new players. We're going into our fourth game. I guess you can see it as a positive in terms of the fact that we haven't lost. But Burstow has a chance has a one-on-one chance to put it away. Bedia has an overhead kick. Other than that, I don't really see much going forward. I don't think we had that many clear-cut chances. And I think if it were against a team that had a bit more of a kind of clinical edge, we probably would have gone down.
Yeah, I think that's the concern for me in particular is I think I totally take the point everyone's making that, look, it's early in the season, we're still gelling under a new manager, et cetera, but we've played three reasonably average teams, two teams in Plymouth and Millwall that I think will be struggling down the wrong end of the table. So to not get more points on the board against them does really feel like, if we are to be in any position towards the end of the season, like we were last year, challenging for the playoffs, that these will feel like really significant points dropped. I also start to think, I feel like it's really hard to have discussions on this without people thinking, you're bringing it back to Rosenia, you're still bitter that Rosenia was sacked. But it's hard not to compare when the whole reasoning behind Rosenia's departure was more attacking football, wanting to succeed, wanting a more more success, more points, more, finishing higher up the table. And you think, well, Rosenia was sacked essentially because we brought all those players in January and they didn't gel and he wasn't able to get results. But then I feel like we're just doing the same thing with Volta, where we brought a lot of players in to this point. We're going to bring a whole lot more in before tomorrow's out, I'm sure. And it's like a month or two into the season, but we're seeing that it's actually really difficult to get new players to gel, and you can't just buy 6 players, chuck them in the team and get them all performing. Like it is really tough. And I do hate to say it because it does feel very agenda driven, but I was really bored watching the Millwall game, and more than I was bored by most or all of Rosenia's games last season. I don't know what it was. I just felt like there was just no, other than that Burstow chance, other than the Bedia chance, it just didn't feel like there was anything happening.
Yeah, I think you'd messaged in the chat saying you were falling asleep. Yeah. It was a rough one, and very rarely, I mean, for those listening in Australia, do we get a game at 9:30, right, on a Saturday night where there's a lot of energy because we're not waking up at 2 a.m. exhausted. And it just felt like we had no, I don't know if passion is the right word, because you could see it, but it just felt like we were trying to do the same thing that we'd done in the last couple of weeks. Like, I think we made a comment that Coyle had tried to make that run again that he had for his goal, and it was shut down immediately. And it just felt like we didn't have anything else up our sleeves. And, you know, look, I think there was an article saying we're trying to sign 5 players ahead of tomorrow. And I think we started even talking about it. Where do they all fit?
Yeah. And I think part of it is it's hard to sort of acknowledge that sometimes we're signing players that aren't going to be best 11 because we just need to sign more players. And it's as for me, I'm like, as long as the players coming in know, look, I'm battling for a spot, I'm not guaranteed a spot, that's fine with me to an extent, as long as we're not splashing like, I don't know, 2-3 million out on a player that's then going to just be sitting on the bench. But it is difficult because you look at like a Mellum, for example, signing at the start of the window, and we sort of think, okay, you know, he's coming in to be in the 11, and then you kind of get to this point, and we've got Puerta who's come in, Zambrano, but, you know, it sounds like Casey Palmer's potentially on his way as well. You're starting to think, and Omer, of course, potentially needing a spot in the side. You're thinking, oh, I don't really know how they all fit in. But then you think, well, like, we do need a stronger bench as well. So we do need to make these signings, and having permanent signings coming in who'll be here longer term is a good thing. But yeah, I hope it's not a case of just let's get all these players in and then Volta will figure out how they all fit in. I hope there's some sort of plan for that. We'll talk about one player in particular who's close to signing where it doesn't necessarily feel like there's a plan. But I did want to go through our MVP votes for this game first before we do so. I was going to give mine first. So I actually gave the 3 to Panda. So that's actually 2 out of the first 3 games that I've given him the 3 votes. I thought first half in particular, there was a near post header from a Millwall player that he stopped quite smartly. He made a couple of other really good saves as well when Millwall were on top and getting a lot of chances. So I thought he's actually starting to impress me more and more. I think his footwork's probably still the area that he needs to work on, and potentially why this new player's coming in. We'll see how that one goes. Jarvis I actually really liked off the bench. I think he's proving himself to be a really good option off the bench with his directness and his intent to just get forward and attack and beat a player. I think his footwork in particular, he's actually surprised me with his quality. And so I was really impressed with him off the bench. And then I feel like he's becoming everyone's favourite whipping boy, but I thought Regan Slater had a great game when we were on top. I mean, he had the follow-up shot when Burstow had that chance. Arguably could have won us a penalty, which we haven't really touched on. But I thought he was looking really good. I think he's starting to settle into the system. Whether he'll get the chance to play in the system as much with all these new signings, it remains to be seen. But he almost seems to me a player like Coyle where we keep thinking, oh, he's going to get pushed out of the team. Oh, he's not going to be good enough to make that step up. And then he always seems to be able to contribute at the level required. Whether we do kind of nudge him out with these new players, I don't know. But yeah, I thought he had a good game as well.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I have to have Slater in there, given I just got a shirt that has Slater on the back of it. I think we had comments saying Panda every game is starting to look more like an actual goalkeeper. Yeah. And I think last game, I think his confidence is just building. He did make a few good saves. He felt more comfortable with the ball. He was picking up passes. I think his confidence is building, and I'm kind of liking the look of him, which is where I don't understand where Rushworth comes in, but we'll talk about it. Jarvis, I would love to actually see him start over Omer, but I just don't know if he's going to have the same effect at the beginning of the game, because I have a feeling that Jarvis has really fresh legs when he comes on at that point in time, where the defenders are already a bit tired or kind of on the back foot. So I think that's worked really well for us the last few games. I don't think I can really put Jarvis down to a fault other than maybe the final pass, because he's very good at running past defenders and is finding that last pass. And yeah, I'll back Slater in there for the 1.
Yeah, nice one. Okay, well, we'll talk transfers now. We have had, and I've sort of been trying to do a bit of research while we've been chatting. So it does sound like there's a fresh rumor coming out that Zambrano might be getting a 2-year ban due to his drug, what would you call it? Drug violation, illicit drugs. Oh, no, I don't know. I'm trying to make it not sound like he's taken like cocaine or something, but performance enhancing drug use.
Yeah.
Which would be a real shame. I think that's likely why in the loan deal there's the obligation if the ban doesn't eventuate. So if it does eventuate, he's only 20. I'm curious what we would look. I guess you kind of just have to let it go, and in 2 years potentially revisit it. But if that does eventuate, that'd be a real shame. But I guess all we can do is wait and see what really comes of it. I think there's probably just a few rumors flying around at the moment. But we'll talk players. So Puerta announced from Leverkusen on loan, also a 21-year-old South American central midfielder, has a shot on him. I don't know if you've seen his highlights. Some of the goals he's scored from outside the box, he just seems to be able to hit the ball really flat, really hard, which is quite a skill, I thought.
I don't trust any of the highlights until they do it for us. I feel like people should know this by now. I'm number one skeptic until I see it. I see them prove themselves.
Yeah. He's wearing the number 20. I think I said in the chat the other day. So
the new bones.
Yeah, there's someone else who wore the 20 recently. Was it Pelkas might have had it? And I was like, oh, this is such a letdown after Bowen. But
yeah,
hopefully Puerta can do it justice. Bedier as well. I don't know if he was confirmed on our last episode, but he signed on a season-long loan from Union Berlin. Didn't look too bad off the bench. I think he's probably lacking a bit in match fitness, but he does seem the sort that if we have to rely on him as our starting striker, I'm okay with that. Like he's got that sort of, he's got the hold up play. He can get involved as well, and he's got a bit of a flair about him if he's going to try those overhead kicks.
Yeah, look, I feel like he just needs the service. I don't feel like he's someone that's going to be able to create much unless he's got a little bit of space. He did look a bit out of shape, or just a bit slow on the back foot, but I think he looks decent, and I think given some game time, he should come good, and I think he's going to get that given that Oscar is bye.
Yeah, Oscar. So I don't know if the club's confirmed it yet, but I think the Mexican club has now confirmed that Oscar.
Well, he's posted on Instagram thanking the fans. So
apparently we got a 7-figure fee, and call me cynical. I'm going to say it's almost like it's just going to be $1 million. Like I don't think it's going to be much more than $1 million. I think it's not. If it was more than $1 million, they'd be saying the figure. I think it's going to be quite minimal in the sense that I'm sure we paid a reasonable signing on bonus for him. He would have been on decent wages. Had a good first, call it 6 months, but other than that, it's been. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was the fact that he was playing with Tete to start with, and they had a good relationship, or things like that. But it's just a shame the way it's panned out for him. After I thought, such a brilliant start, where I thought, hey, we've actually found a really decent striker here.
Yeah, I agree.
In terms of rumours, some more concrete than others. Carl Rushworth apparently has had his medical with us to join on loan from Brighton. This was apparently an offer or a deal that was too good for Ajun to pass up to bring in a third, theoretically first choice goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I made a post on Twitter the other day, which I don't know. Sometimes I make posts on Twitter which just get 1 or 2 likes, and I just think no one really cares about it. But then this one's got 40 or 50 reactions. So clearly it's a topic that everyone's got strong views on, one way or the other, about whether we need a third first choice goalkeeper, particularly one coming on loan with my understanding anyway is there's a hefty loan fee if he doesn't play. So as in there's an incentive for us to play him as much as we can. Just from our previous conversation about Panda, it just makes me kind of question, well, what's the thinking with Panda and Rachopi? Are we sending one of them out on loan? Because I can't imagine it would be great for either of them to just be sat in the stands most weeks.
No, we would have to. I feel like if especially if that condition is true in terms of we're going to have to pay more if we don't play him, and we're out of one of the cups, so it's not those cup games are gone.
Yeah.
I feel, given Rachopi's first involvement in the team, maybe he's the one that goes. I'm just not sure.
I find that so I don't disagree.
It's not a signing. It's not a signing we need. So I'm very confused by it. There are obviously signing positions we need, like strikers, wingers.
I guess my question is, if Rachopi had a great League Cup game and not made that error, would we have made this signing? And if the answer to that is no, we wouldn't have made this signing. then I'm just thinking, what were we doing with our scouting
Yeah.
that one League Cup game has swayed our opinion on Rachopi more so than the decision to sign him in the first place? Like,
Did we not recently appoint a new head of?
Yeah, we did.
Scouting? Was it head of talent or head of scouting, whatever it was?
Head of recruitment or whatever. Yeah.
Head of recruitment. And was that post Rachopi signing?
That's a good question. It might have been. I don't know.
If it was after, and then this is one of the players that the new person has recruited. It wasn't Lee Dunbar. I can't remember who it was.
Dublin. His name's Dublin.
So I don't know. I think one of them has to go, or one of them has to have a conversation. We have to have a conversation with them saying, look, you're not going to play as much. You're just going to be a kind of third keeper. You might be able to play in the under 21s. I don't know, because I think we put Cartwright out on loan.
Yeah. It just seems like if we've spent over $1 million on each of them, like Panda in January was what, 1.5 million roughly. I'm sure Rachopi was probably about $1 million, maybe slightly less. That still just seems like a lot of money to be spending on keepers that we're then not playing. I mean, they're young, so maybe it's just, for the long term, I guess, but it just seems a very strange one. Conscious that you've got to jump off in about 5 minutes, so I'll try and run through a few more of these before you have to go. We also had links overnight with Casey Palmer from Coventry potentially coming in on a permanent deal, my understanding. Baz seems to be saying that that's reasonably likely, so that seems to be a bit more of a concrete one. I don't know. I don't actually know that much. He seems like more of a central midfielder than an attacking midfielder, but at his peak when he was playing for Huddersfield and stuff like that back in the day, he seemed quite decent, but I think he's had a few injuries and just not been too consistent. So it doesn't seem like one that really excites me all that much.
Yeah, I mean, he had a decent game. What was it, against Oxford for Coventry? Look, I'm not one to shut it down. I'm curious as to where he fit in, but it seems. I mean, he has a decent history, so it could be a good signing. Given that, I think Meffert from where was he? Where was he coming from?
Is it Hoffenheim?
I think it was Hoffenheim, but he was seen at training with them. So now I'm very confused as to whether that's also fallen through, which is maybe why we're looking at Palmer.
Yeah, I think that might be right. Yeah.
But I think, if we're talking about others, I think we put in a new bid for Abu Kamara.
Saw that, yeah. So I think there seems to be a sense that's going to happen, but it seems like one of those ones that's just going to go down to the wire and 11th hour it could fall through for all we know.
Yeah. I mean, talking about falling through, Liam Cooper.
Yes, good segue.
I think some Hull City fans are probably very happy about.
Do you think there's part of me that's like, I just didn't really understand it to begin with. I get, if from our conversation at the start, you want your depth players who are happy to sit on the bench. So having an older guy like Cooper doesn't bother me from that perspective. Whether he's actually going to be fit is another thing, but it's sort of, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. If the club is genuinely seeing the reaction to it and going, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this, and they've pulled out, like, it kind of reminds me of all the Allsop talk last season, where is Ajun being kind of driven too much by what he's seeing on social media? Maybe like similar with Rosinha, but is he sort of saying, oh, this represents the majority of you, so I shouldn't do things? Like, it concerns me a little bit.
I don't think it has to do with the fans. Okay. I personally think they're just assessing whether bringing someone in like that is a benefit. I kind of see him as the equivalent of bringing in like Billy Sharp at the end of last year. We've got a lot of young defenders now. Like if we're thinking like Hughes, Burns, we've got a bunch that could benefit from a quite senior, experienced centre back, even if it's just in the back of the dressing room. And that's kind of where I thought Cooper was going to play a role, less so starting and coming off the bench, but just that kind of strong head in the dressing room that might be able to guide these young players. But our entire centre back situation is confusing me.
We've got a comment from Pato just saying, I think Kamara is a deal we can say will be finalised. More worried about Tom Cannon since there's so much interest and not much coverage in who he favours.
I don't rate Tom I don't rate that signing. I don't understand why we bid 5 million or 6 million, whatever it is, for Tom Cannon, given his like return in first team football was maybe like, what was it?
He's only 21 in fairness, but
it was like 4 goals in 43 games.
Yeah. I think for me, if we had to prioritize anything for tomorrow, it's getting at least a right winger in and a striker in. I just worry that, we're going to have this Casey Palmer deal. We're going to have Rushworth. We're going to have potentially another centre back. When the play, like, those are fine as like, whatever their dressing rooms, they're dressing that, they're not the substantial ones that we need. We need a striker. We need a right winger. Those need to be our focuses.
Yeah.
So Ben Doak as well, linked from Liverpool, which I think after they've signed Chiesa, there's been the suggestion that he'll now be allowed out on loan. Obviously, there seems to be about 6 or 7 clubs interested in him, so that's a really difficult one to guarantee. But you look at our relationship with Liverpool, with Morton and Carvalho last season. Maybe they will favour us. He's pretty highly rated. He's only 18, I think, ex-Celtic.
Like I said, I think there were comments that none of those links were sustainable. So I don't think they were actually. I don't think there was any substance in them. So I think there's just names being thrown around. And Pato's right. Like, if we panic by a striker, we're in trouble.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hey, look, if you need to jump off, that's all good. I can wrap things up here.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
No, too easy. Cheers. Thanks for joining me, Mike. See ya. Cool. Okay. Well, that sort of runs through all the transfer links, I believe. So Tom Cannon linked from Leicester. The one that will be interesting to see, I think, I still suspect that Jay Stansfield is the primary target as a striker from Fulham. It seems as if all the noises that Fulham wants to keep him in that first team squad, but he strikes me as one where if we could get that over the line, that would be quite a significant one and quite an exciting one to get him in on a permanent. But I think, like Pato says, the last thing we need is a panic buy. But as it gets closer to the deadline, if those targets aren't coming in, if Kamara from Norwich doesn't turn out, if Doak goes elsewhere, it will be really interesting to see what the club does, what backup options we have in those key positions, because I think going in to the season with just essentially Ömer and Jarvis on that right wing and essentially just Bedia and Burstow up top, I don't know if that's enough cover for us. We've lost Mike now, so I will just run through quickly that preview of the Leeds game before we sign off. In Leeds, sort of a mixed start to the season with the draw against Portsmouth and West Brom before a comprehensive 2-0 win over Sheff Wednesday in the last game. It can be really interesting to see what they do in the window as well, because I think there's a good chance a few of those players still leave before the end of the window. Nonto, probably the main one who could leave, and leave them in a weaker position before they play us. So I think both clubs will be in a bit of a flux before that fixture this weekend. So it's really hard to predict how that game will go. I think the concern that we sort of spoke about at the start of the episode with that Millwall game and the draws to start the season for City is that we really do need to start to see a few stronger performances. And given the fact that we've got Leeds and Sheffield United as our next two, the concern is that we're now playing those bigger teams and we will be punished for those mistakes a whole lot more than we were against the Millwalls, the Plymouths of the league. So even another draw in this game, as boring as that sounds, would probably be a positive. Starting the season with 4 draws would be a bit interesting. But if we can get some sort of result, I think that would be a huge positive. And even if, look, to be honest, as defeatist as it sounds, even if we were to lose 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that, it's not a huge concern. The concern would come if we were to lose 4 or 5-0 and look really out of sorts. Might be able to brush it off as it's just a parachute club essentially, nothing hugely to concern ourselves with. But heading into the international break with 3 points on the board and a thrashing at the hands of Leeds would be pretty negative. Comment from Pato just saying he thinks that Ömer is at his best in the middle, not on the wing. Absolutely, completely agree. Liked him as a false nine last season where he can just press. I completely agree. I think if we are to have Ömer as our primary right winger, it's a big concern. I think Mike's point that Jarvis is great off the bench is also a really valid one. I don't know if I'd want to start Jarvis on the right wing. So Kamara to me is almost the priority signing at this stage. And if that doesn't happen, having a clear idea of a backup and to be honest, I'd even say Kamara and Doak would be priorities at this stage to have have that backup option. Whether Liverpool would be happy to loan him here, knowing he's not a guaranteed first choice, who knows? But having a bit of depth on that right wing is pretty key to me, because I just think we sort of target these players and just sort of live in this perfect world that, they'll play the 46 games for the season or 40 games or whatever will be left. And all it takes is an injury or a suspension, and suddenly we're scrambling again to get Murray or Jarvis on that right wing. I would love to be off to Leeds, Pato. I'm actually just down here in Sydney, Australia, so we'll be watching the game at midnight Saturday night. I haven't actually been over to England since 2019. My wife and I watched the Sheffield United game. I think it confirmed their promotion over Leeds with that game. That was the one where the Leeds fans had the hissy fit because I think Nigel Adkins debuted, George Long in goal, and Sheffield United beat us 3-0, and the Leeds fans thought we were doing Sheffield United a favour. So that was a fun one from one perspective. It would have been nice to see a win, but wasn't quite to be. But look, for the Leeds game this weekend, I'd love to see Hughes in from the start. Oh, no, I'm not living in England now. No, sorry. So it's 10:30 in the morning down here in Sydney. Not living in England. I'd love to be, but not the case. But yeah, no. So Hughes in from the start for me for McLaughlin. It'll be interesting to see if McLaughlin's still here when the window closes, now that Cooper deal's potentially fallen through. But otherwise, I mean, I guess Bedger up top for Burstow is probably the other change I'd make. I can't think of anything else. Maybe Puerta in for Zambrano, if there's any truth in these rumors about Zambrano, and we kind of want to get him out of the spotlight and let him get his head right before any news on that's confirmed. I can't think of any other obvious changes that I'd make. Look, I guess if Rushworth comes in, if we're going to put him in from the start and bring him in for Panda, it's probably the other one. But otherwise, Miller, Mellum, any other changes that leap out. But look, it's gonna be a crazy end to the window. We'll see how it all goes, and we'll certainly be back here next week to review all of those changes to the squad through the window, and also the result against Leeds. The week after next, because we've got the international break, of course. Next week, we'll probably try and do another one of our flashback episodes as we get towards the end of that series. And then finally, just this comment from Pato. So Giles, Drame, Jones, and Hughes as a must at the back. I think, look, it's an interesting point actually, just as a wrapping things up. Drame at left back actually looked pretty decent. So whether we're using him as a left back if Giles does leave, or whether we're just going to have him as that flexible option to cover it right back or left back. He certainly didn't look out of place there against Millwall. Whether we look to go with Coyle just because we want to be a bit more defensively cautious against Leeds, potentially, but Drame seems much more of an attacking option if we are going to play a team that we're looking to attack more and press more. Will certainly be interesting, but look, we'll see how we go with that one. But really appreciate everyone joining in. I know that it's about 1:30 in the morning over in the UK, so to have 6 people watching live is awesome. Apologies, Mike had to drop off early. It is sort of the middle of the workday for him. I've got the day off, so I've been a bit more flexible with my timing. But if you're new around here, hit subscribe to the channel so that you can watch our videos when they come out. Hit the like so that we get more views and attention on these videos. As always, much appreciated. But until next time, come on, City.